Hey, Jason Lisk here. It is PGA Championship week, and on Pool Genius here today, we're going to be talking one and done picks, but I'm also going to expand the show out as we do this live version and go a little deeper. We're going to cover one and dones. We're going to cover your most popular picks at the PGA Championship, some of my pick thoughts as we get into the second half of one and done pools, but also going to go over the splash tiers, some of the more common tiers, and some strategy to think about as you make picks in other majors pools where you may have to pick several golfers. So we're going to go over that as well today on the One and Done show. So PGA Championship, what do we got going on? It's at a course that the actual PGA has not been played at since 1962. The last two events at Aronimink near Philadelphia were in 2020, a women's PGA, and in 2018, the BMW Championship won by Keegan Bradley. So they have played here in the last decade. It was the BMW Championship. It has not been in the last 5 years. We don't have that much history, and a lot of the top players really haven't played here or maybe have played here once. So lots of uncertainty about this course. So let's talk about the course, and then I'm going to get into the three most popular. But get your questions in as we go through this, because I will also be covering those in depth as we go through the video and talk about all of the one and done options. So Aronimink, it's not the longest course as it comes to major standards. You know, there have certainly been longer recent PGA championship events. There have also been obvious U.S. Opens. There have been plenty that have had more distance. It's pushing about 7,500 yards, a par 70, only two par fives on the course. So really only two chances for those par five eagles out there. But as you listen to people talk about the course this week and what it presents, what it does have is a lot of bunkers, well above average number of bunkers for a course on the PGA Tour, and also large greens, undulating greens that can be tricky. Lots of greens where you're going to want to be in the right position, and because of the size and all that, it's going to place emphasis on approach play, being on the right areas with your approach shots for this course. And so I've got a quote here from actually Rory today talking about playing Aronimink. He said, I think in this day and age, I'm not sure if this course is going to test all aspects of your bag. There's going to be, as I said, strategy off the tee is pretty non-existent. It's basically bash driver down there and figure it out from there. Then he talks about the greens being, the main thing this week. So, and certainly Rory can hit it further than most, but while it will have major setup in terms of some rough, it sounds like the biggest defense for this course is going to have to be its bunkers, its approach play, and its greens, and the difficulty and whether the wind picks up and how difficult it is to get the right positions on the greens. And so it's going to be a course that is going to test iron play. Certainly having length off the tee will matter, just like it does at any course, and putting you in better positions if you can hit your driver and be somewhat accurate. But it's going to test approach play this week, maybe more so than some of the courses that have put an even bigger emphasis on distance off the tee. So I think what we're going to look for, putting is somewhat unpredictable, but it does matter here. Guys that can putt in difficult conditions, guys that can read undulating greens, guys that can put themselves in approach play positions that don't require having a really long lag putt to get yourself down in two. And so that's going to matter. And then I think we're going to look at approach play, as we would always do, irons. But you're going to see, I think, a wider variety of iron play here. You're going to see more wedges. So you're going to see the gamut from, long irons down to some wedge play being important this week. And we could see a pretty low score. Keegan Bradley obviously wasn't set up for a major, and it was 2018. But back in 2018, Bradley won the BMW Championship in a playoff over Justin Rose, both at 20 under, with two others. Xander and Billy Horschel were one stroke back. Rory was at a minus 18. So there were lots of low numbers in the upper teens in that event. And so I wonder if we're going to see a pretty low number win this thing relative to recent major standards as well. So let's turn to the most popular picks. Here's my read on this week. I don't think we're going to get extreme steam on anyone like we have seen with Rory last week at the Truist, where in plenty of pools he pushed over 20%. I don't think we're going to see extreme steam like we saw at the Masters, where Rahm, because of live and availability, also pushed up to 20% in plenty of pools. I think we're going to more see a balanced, spread out group that's going to draw 10. Maybe somebody gets to 15. The issue is, of course, we're now halfway through the season, pretty much at the halfway point on events, depending on when you started and if you end with the Tour Championship or the BMW. If your pool started and included the Pebble Beach and started in January, I believe we're now at 8 signature events plus majors plus the Players Championship, with either 7 or 8 to go, depending on if you use the Tour Championship. So we're pretty much right at the halfway point. And not surprisingly, a lot of the top golfers who have played reasonably well throughout the spring, drawn picks across multiple events, are now ticking below 50% available. Some as low as in the low 30%. I think a lot of the guys like Scheffler, McIlroy, after his high pick rate last week, have now crossed 50%. And so that is a factor, because everybody's going to have different golfers available, and most of the top options are going to be available to half or less than half of the entries out there. So here's how I kind of see it, though I'm wondering if I had Bryson DeChambeau as my top on availability. He was the lesser used of the 2 live golfers that are on the top of the leaderboard at the Masters. Now, he missed the cut, and Rahm didn't play well there either. And I do expect some backlash. I don't think they'll get like major steam, but I think because of that availability, Bryson will be a pick people can fall back to. But I also think Scheffler's going to get 10, 11%, just because, this is maybe one of like 5 events where you're going to use them. And if he's about half available, I think people are going to use him here. Some are going to save him for the Memorial, for the U.S. Open, for the playoff events, for the Open Championship, but he's going to be used here. I think he's in form. He's the 3 straight second place finishes. So my prediction is Bryson number 1, but I might lower that a tick. But I do think because of his availability, he'll be up top. He's in the top 6 or so on the leaderboard in terms of the odds right now. I'm going to pull that up so we can see where he stands. So Bryson is currently on our board 5th, right? He's basically, he and Xander and Ludvig are pretty much in a bunched up group right around 5th, depending on what book you look at. And so I think he's going to get some interest. Now, some of the trends I'm looking at suggest maybe that interest is going the other way, and maybe he won't finish as the most popular. Then I think you got Scotty and Rory, and I think it's because of what I talked about last week with Rory and what I just talked about with Scotty. I think both of those will push close to 10%. Rory, we know he has sat out signature events. We know that he's played a limited schedule. He's all about the majors. He's probably playing the Memorial. But outside of these 3 majors coming up in the Memorial, he's no guarantee to play at Travelers. He's no guarantee to play a lot of other events or even show up at FedEx St. Jude. And so you're really looking at like maybe 4 or 5 events to use Rory. And so I think he's going to get 10% again, even though he was really popular last week. Underperformed last week expectations. Still had a solid week, but certainly did not reward those who picked him in a big way. But I think he's certainly another guy they're going to turn to. So I have those three at the top of my popularity, but again, I think it's going to be spread out. Meaning I think that everybody on that leaderboard, everybody at the top of the odds board, from Cam Young to Xander to Ludvig and Fitzpatrick, I think that's the tier, along with Rahm because of availability, that are all going to draw picks. And if any of those guys win, it's going to be a big boost to whichever one has them. And so that's your top three most popular breakdown for the one and dones. Now, strategy wise, I'm going to get into my top picks here in a little bit in the show, but get those questions in and I'll cover some of those. But strategy wise, I think you want to think about, there's not much course history here. We just talked about Aronimink and kind of who it might favor. As with most courses, it's going to favor good golfers, right? They can do a lot of things. You're going to want to look at your iron players. And then if you're going to go down the board, find the guys that are good at something, like their approach play, or, I typically wouldn't advise locking in completely on putting, but I think it's a week to at least consider who might be good at putting from distance, putting in these tough situations. So I'm going to go down the board because I do think, because we're at the midway point, we're starting to think about how do we want to play this, right? Like where you are in the standings. I think by the U.S. Open, maybe by the Memorial, which is the next big event after this week, they do the Texas Swing for 2 smaller purse events in Texas. A lot of these golfers will sit out. Scheffler will play, but in at least one of those, but they will sit out, a lot of them. And so by the U.S. Open at the latest, you're going to want to really be making your picks based on how your pool has shaped up. How far back are you? Are you in the money? Do you let that dictate your pick? Because at some point you got to pick for the position you're in, not where you want to be. And so you're going to want to think more strategically on uniqueness and things like that. Well, you may want to start doing that now. If you're 5 million back or more, it means you're going to have to hit multiple outcomes over the last half of the season above what the typical entry is going to get. And so you're going to have to find those outcomes. They're going to be a little more less picked, less traveled. And maybe if even it's not the golfer you would pick straight up, but it's the play you need to make. So here's some of those guys at the PGA. I think you want to go down to the 1 dot guys on our board. That means below 3%. Fleetwood's right on the edge of that. I think Fleetwood's a good pick. He's going to be right on the edge of it. But I do think this next tier is very interesting. This is sorted by odds. And I guess I should also point out, we made an upgrade. We added something here to both our one and done and our majors product. We added a top 20 finish odds column, which you now see. Just another set of data. Obviously, you're trying to hit winners in one and done pools, just to give you another data point of the odds for the tournament and kind of how they're viewed and what their chances of finishing somewhat highly are. So you can look at that as well. But yeah, let's look down here from the Fleetwood tier on down and talk about some of these guys. We got a question here. How do you feel about Aberg entering this event? I'll answer that before I get into this group. I mean, I liked him last week. It certainly wasn't an amazing result, but Ludvig going top 10 last week was a solid result. I'll come over here. He was eighth last week. That certainly was an above average result, especially when you beat the chalk pick of like Rory and finished above Rory. It was a good net week. I like Aberg here again. I mean, he's got length. He's been really good on approach, and he's been pretty consistently in the top 10. What he hasn't done is finish a tournament. He has not played the PGA Championship well. You see he has 2 starts, and he finished outside the top 70, meaning he did not play well here, missed the cut twice, I believe, in his 2 starts. But, different courses, PGA Championship, kind of like probably the least predictive from year to year because of those courses and differences. I like Ludvig, and I think that will hold his popularity down from being like huge. Could he be 5 to 10%? Yes, I think he will be. I think he's going to be one of those guys. I certainly will have some Ludvig this week as well, after also having in some entries last week. So here's another good one. From Papa 4195. How do you change your approach on picking this event if you take 2 golfers? Still have to take 2 at the U.S. Open, the Open, and both events at the end of the year. I am in a pool where I take 2 golfers every week. And so I will tell you what my approach is. Now, I will tell you, in that particular pool, I've been running very poorly this year. And so I'm outside the money. I seem to always pick the golfers on the wrong week in that particular pool. But I did place in the same pool in the money last year and made a charge over the second half of the season. So kind of mentally what I do throughout the year, because in that one, I can take 2 golfers, but I can use them twice. So I also have to keep in mind that. Yours may be different. You may just be 1 and done, but pick 2. So what I try to do is enforce like saving golfers. So if I can use a guy twice, I'm going to use them at some point over the first half of the season, but force myself not to use them twice, because most of the people, what I see is if they have an option to use them, they're going to use them up. And so I'm getting to a point where a lot of the other entries have used up their top golfers. I'm going to try to enforce some quotas on myself. If I've used Scotty, I'm going to save Rory longer. If I've used Cam, I'm going to say, I'm going to try to have balance across my season. And then as I look at each tournament, what I want to do, and this is especially if you're trailing or if you're if you're in a neutral position, like it's just to start the year, if you are going along and you're kind of in the mix, but you're not like out in front, because the strategy I think is different if you are protecting a lead or if you're trying to do something like that. What I try to do is have an A golfer and a B golfer, and meaning I'm not going to pick Ludvig and Cam Young in the same tournament. And the reason I'm not going to do that, and I actually studied this, and I think I wrote an article on the site, you're kind of spreading out your risk and reward profile. And if you use 2 of your top golfers at the same event, you're kind of capping one. Like, you need to hit winners. And so I'm going to try to hit winners by having a top golfer at as many events as possible, and then a second golfer that I hope is somewhat underpicked or undervalued and could be that key. Either he pops up and hopefully wins in a surprise, or at least gets me a good finish and wasn't all that popular and keeps me off from picking just the 2 best golfers available to me. So I try to enforce myself that by mentally having in my mind who are my A golfers, who are the guys I want to use at the top 10 events as my A golfer, and then everybody else is in that B mix. And I'm trying to always have a second golfer who is a bit underused. So that brings me to what I was going to show, which was this next tier. Because I think in an event like this, this is the tier you're going to make your second pick from if you are in a pool where you're making 2 picks, right? And so let's talk through this tier, because I think there's some interesting. Fleetwood's right at the top of it. I have a hard time figuring out where Fleetwood's going to be picked, because sometimes based on his numbers, I project him too high, and nothing outrageous. Like maybe I'll have him at 4.5 and he ends up at 2.5 in pools I'm looking at. So I have him in the 3, right around 3% range, maybe a hair under. Solid week last week, really good pick. I had him. He was another guy that I mixed in entries along with Ludvig, and another solid week. Didn't win, but a nice solid performance in a week where you got an extreme kind of completely unpicked player in Raiton winning. So good result. So Fleetwood's right at the top. Brooks is in play. We know his PGA Championship history. He has certainly wasn't good while on live and coming to play in majors. He just, I think, finished 11th last week. When he again hasn't got into the signature events, he had to play Myrtle Beach last week, was 11th. Nice solid result. He's actually first in strokes gained on approach for the PGA season. Doesn't have as many registered rounds as some other golfers, but on average, he is first right now, which is, a testament that Brooks is getting closer. And so certainly if he's going to come in sub 3, he's in play. Colin, Morikawa, Henley, iron players. So you can justify it if you're trailing or if you need to be a little more unique. You don't need to be like wildly unique, but you need a sub 3% guy. I think they're going to be in that range. Siwoo Kim was a disappointment last week, but is up there in approach. Like he's also in the top 10 in approach play strokes gained for the year, but had a bad week last week. This course should theoretically fit him, except for the putting concerns, right? Never been like a strong putter, and the fact this could be a real test on the greens there is a concern. There's some guys down here that I actually do like further down the list. I'm going to come down. Ricky Fowler, the last time it was played here in the BMW Championship, now that was a different Ricky Fowler, but we're probably closest to that Ricky Fowler now in terms of, he went through the wilderness a bit, had fallen off, wasn't even a top 70 player consistently where he was getting into the playoff events in recent years consistently. He was top 10 at this course, shot 5 under 3 days in a row to start it, was sitting at 15 under entering Sunday, shot a 16 under the last time he played here. He's up there. His game's gotten better. His putting is really good. So he's one, if you're like, I want to lean into a guy that might just be playing better right now and hot with the flat stick, Ricky Fowler's certainly in that mix. The other guy I want to highlight, JJ Spaun. Well, two, Spaun and Kitayama. I think if I'm setting like where am I willing to go in a one and done pool, I don't know that you need to go too much below, because you'll see a lot of these guys have no dots, meaning I'm projecting them at below 1.0%. So JJ Spaun, I'm going to take this screen away because I want to share a different one. And I want to remove this. So stay with me here while I figure out how to share this screen over here on live. So I'm going to pull up JJ Spaun's profile and share this. Okay. So here we go. This is JJ Spaun in 2026. This is on the PGA website. They have these cool visuals. You can look at stats, and it shows you like this, what I call this graph, where it shows you the different elements of strokes gained, and you kind of visualize what kind of season this player's having. So what's this graph showing us? His putting's not been good. And you remember he won the U.S. Open with just getting hot and rolling in putts. Won the U.S. Open last year with that. So here's what he looks like in 26. We know he hasn't consistently had the success, but he did win. And he's playing better recently. He got off to a rough start in January and February. Won at the end of March in Texas, and has been playing pretty well since then. Putting, 145th, losing strokes gained putting in 2026. Here's what it looked like in 25 when he was one of the golfers of the year, won the U.S. Open. Look at that chart. What's the difference? Honestly, his approach, his off the tee, everything else looks extremely similar. The only difference is putting. He was good at putting. He was solid to above average putting last year. I'm just going to flip back and forth. I'm going to enlarge on it so here we can see it, just so you can see how JJ Spaun. There's the putting numbers. Well, when I enlarge too much, I can't do the thing. But here we go. 25. Putting goes out. Everything else looks the same. 26. It's almost identical. That's very different from 24 before his breakout, when it looked like that, when he struggled, when he wasn't great off the tee, et cetera, et cetera. His approach game was still good. It was off the tee. And then that got better in 25. Everything was really good. And this year, everything's still really good except the putting. So you know what? I like JJ Spaun as a sleeper, especially if I'm on an entry that doesn't have, that needs maybe to take a chance, an entry that maybe I've used more than an above average amount of the top guys already. So I need to figure out what events am I going to mix somebody in to round out my signature event and major season. Spawn's definitely in play. I mean, he's kind of at, like I said, at the outer limit. I don't know that I need to go too much below Spaun if he's going to be about 1% owned. And by the odds, it would be pretty stunning that he gets much more than that. Adam Scott's approach play is really good. Putting has also been the issue for him. We saw him have that bad opening round last week, but work his way all the way back to 24th from DFL on Thursday. And Justin Rose is, I guess I should mention Justin Rose, who's up here. What do we do with Justin Rose? Justin Rose had played really good. Like, there haven't been many events at Aronimink. He had won it back in, I think, 2010 or 11 when there was an event here. And he also placed, like I said, he lost in that playoff to Keegan Bradley in 18. And we know he's played well at the Masters. He won already this year early in January. He switched his irons to McLaren irons. It has not been good so far in his results. So I'm a little leery in that I'm seeing a Justin Rose at 65th and a 45th place finish at his last two signature events after he made that switch. But he's up there. Certainly has the course history. But I think all these guys at around 1-2% are good strategic picks to consider. And I don't think you need to go much more below, say, if you want to get real. I think Bobby Mack's going to be very unpopular. He really hasn't played well recently. And so you're taking that risk. But those are some of the risks you got to take when you're trailing. But I don't think you got to get much below Bobby Mack, Adam Scott, JJ Spaun, and Sam Burns, who's also been good with the putter, if you're thinking about getting unique this year. So I'm going to get back to some more questions. This is just comment here. Good job, Papa. Sitting in 50th. Okay. Well, let's get you above that. Find that golfer and get above that. He clarified he can only take one in that pick two pool. That's fine. So I would do the same there. I would try to balance, if I've used some of them, I'm saving some of them to have as a hammer, because in a pick two pool, that availability is going to go down even more. Like, I would guess like the Schefflers and McIlroys of the world are well sub 50% in that pool. How aggressive should I be if I'm only in the money by about 200,000 in a large contest? Maybe like second tier golfers ownership wise. Yeah, this will be one that we go through as the season progresses and as we get in, because these are the interesting ones. I think right now it's early enough, given this spread, that so much can change. So I think you just want to make picks that make sense for your whole season, who you have left, and if you want to get into that second tier of ownership because you want to save some guys, like I don't want to use, I don't know who you have, but Rory or Scotty or Cam Young, or I want to save them. I want to get more unique. Yeah, go down the board. It's fine. I think you play it differently when we get deeper into the season and things get crystallized a little more. There's an argument for going super conservative just above the cut line very late in the year when you can't really improve your position or the odds are slim. You basically cover the biggest chunk that could pass you. And that way, if it's like a low-owned winner, you're okay, because you need several of them to hit. So you just want to cover those outcomes. But right now, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would make the best pick in that situation. I think you're in a neutral position. I think you're kind of agnostic on like ownership. Make the best pick for your entry and save golfers if it makes sense strategically, because you want to use them at a different event or when you think they'll be a little less owned. Now, larger contests, you may want to get riskier to make that big move, but it's going to depend on your payout structure, how important it is for you to make a big leap versus catch in the contest and maintain your position until late. I think as long as you're within one win of some key payout spots, you're good. So just like maintain that distance, maybe get a little riskier if you start to fall behind it. Okay, let's see. Thoughts on Akshay? I didn't talk about Akshay just now, but fits into the same mold. He's been really he can be he ranks, I think, top 10 in putting. It's a course that's going to test putting, and it's going to put guys to the test that they're going to have to play well in the short game. Certainly the reason when we talk on this show about not putting as much emphasis there, because like a lot of things, it's a lot noisier. It's kind of like fourth downs in football or third down conversion rates versus, can you just control the line of scrimmage? You're going to get a lot more noise from tournament to tournament, but he is certainly a guy that's shown he putts well. And when he does, he can be in contention. And so I think Akshay's certainly in that mix of consideration also for guys. I think he's right below where I said Kitayama. Yeah, Akshay's right there. He's right at plus 10,000. So he might be a little bit riskier than I want to get typically on a one and done, but I don't mind it. Definitely somebody to look at as we look through these tiers contests we're going to get through here in a bit. Okay, here's Crutches. Crutches is saying Rahm. Okay, well, I respect Crutches. I'm going to take a look at it. That may very well be right. I mean, Rahm was at over 20% at the Masters. He is above Rory on the odds board, or not Rory, Bryson. And so it's not like he's prohibitively used, because 3/4 of a pool or more will have him. The hardest read on Rahm is narrative and how people view him, right? Live, I think overall, the live golfers will be less owned than they were at the Masters when those guys were 40%, 35% of the field were on those two. I think because of their poor performance and because of Liv's kind of all the storylines going on around Liv and Rahm in particular not playing as well in the majors since he made the move, feels like even when he finishes okay, he doesn't start okay. So I wonder how much of that will impact people, but I'm guessing. I don't know. I think Rahm will be more tolerable on ownership. But could that be 10? Could it be 15? Like I said, I do think we're not going to get like a massive spike this week. I think you're going to see it spread out. Rahm could be in that mix. I'll certainly think about that. And I'll probably do some adjustments later today to my projections. Certainly by Wednesday, I will be adjusting projections again. Okay. And then Crutches in first place, though, have to decide between playing defense with most people having Rahm or going for the kill shot. Yeah, I think you can play defense, but you're also in great shape to take chances, right? Because again, I don't know if Rahm's going to be 20%. So that's an interesting. Do you like Rahm as one of your top picks? If so, take him. If it's strictly to play defense, I'm probably trying something else. But I mean, by the odds, he's up there, and he could be that guy that is undervalued somewhat. The live and availability factor is going to keep him from being 3%, but he could be 10, he could be 15. He's probably not 20. Would be my guess. Yeah, I mean that's the point I was making. Good discussions, good comments always from Crutches. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be flatter. I think people are slightly more spooked. We don't know the level of that. And again, if you're sitting there and you've used Scheffler and you've used Rory and you've used Cam Young, maybe you fall back to them anyway. I think that's reasonable, because I think your choices are go with one of those two or go down the board on some of the deeper cuts that we just talked about, right? And so what will people want to do? But yeah, I will almost certainly have Rahm, Doesn't feel great, honestly, because just the way he started. I know theoretically, and seeing him hit the ball on the tour and just knowing what he has been, and like he's the class of Liv. It's pretty clear, but he's just not tested that much. That he should be in contention. He should be in the group with these guys. So it's a bit of FOMO. Like, I don't want to miss out if it does happen, because it won't be a insignificant portion that have them. But that's something I'm going to grapple with, the exact percentage I end up at, like whether I'm going to be below or about even with where I think the public might be. Okay, so I'm going to take away this JJ Spaun screen grab here and switch back here. I'm going to tee up our tier picks in here in a second. I am going to give you my thoughts on this, because I do think it's like the top three. Who would I take? And I'm going to give you a mix of guys that I'm going to take. So up top, I think in the top tier, if I had Scotty, I will use Scotty on some, because I believe I have him on over half my entries, or roughly. And so I'm not going to be zero Scotty. But I'm not sure I'm going to be like, I still want him for the Memorial and US Open more so. But he's hot, so I get it. But given like more uncertainty around this course, I'm far more comfortable eating the chalk, so to speak, on Scotty at over 10% at the Memorial. And I still think he's got a US Open win coming this summer could be it. And so I'm probably going to be Scotty outside my top three, but in my portfolio, I'm going to go among the top guys. I'll go Xander. Because I think he's going to mix. He wasn't great last week. I think that's going to hold ownership down from being extreme steam. He's a guy I know I have available on several entries. And so I'm going to use him across multiple entries this week as Xander. Tempted on Rory. I think it's a good week to use Rory. I don't think you want to be zero Rory, because you don't want to be like getting to the Tour Championship season and the playoffs and be trailing and it not make sense to use Rory, because plenty of others still have him too. So I'm probably looking to fire. Xander owes me money for last week from crutches. Yeah. He owes us lots. But you know, back on the playing multiple entries in one and done is just, if nothing, it's a test of being a glutton for punishment. So Xander, and then like in that next year, I talked about. I think I'm going to go Spaun as like my deeper cut guy outside plus 6,000, but guy I think does have a chance. Has played at, he's gone 5th last week, 14th 2 weeks ago, 25th at the RBC. And then we know he won in Texas. So Spawn's a lot closer, as I showed in that graph, that last year, if he can get hot with the flat stick this week. And I think, it's certainly within his capability at one of these majors to pop up. And then for my third one, this is a guy, like, I'm going to go in that 3-ish, guys near the top. This is tough. I'm going to add Tommy Fleets, just because this falls at that crossroads, right? Not going to be chalk, close enough to the leaderboard. And just like last week, I don't think you need him to win to make it a solid pick if he can just play well and be up there. And he was, again, at the BMW in 2018. He was also on the leaderboard. He, at that one, shot a +1 on day one. He went 8 under on Friday, Saturday. I think it's a good all around. Fleetwood, good with the irons, can be good with the short game, ranks up there in putting. I think Fleetwood's a guy that I'm considering, because he won't be super popular, but will give you enough to be close to those leaders and give you a chance to win heads up against guys with more popularity in your pool. So those are my top 3. And now I'm going to queue up our Masters and Majors product and pull up some of these splash tiers, and we're going to talk through them. Because I'm going to show you, let me find a good pool for that. Here we go. Let me get this shared. Okay. There we go. And I'll tighten this up so you can see it here. This is for the splash. Now, they have, I think for most of them, they have 8 tiers. You will see some contests with 6 where basically tiers 7 and 8 and 6 get combined into the big mass tier instead of tier 8, just catching everybody. But I'm going to go through quickly these 8. I just updated some of the data this morning on popularity. You know, you're going to see different popularity in different pools and different tiers. You all can set up your own tiers. It's the beauty of this product. You can tell us who's in your tier. Maybe it's a private pool. We're going to extrapolate, and we've got some underlying factors and data, and it's going to try to extrapolate popularity based on the 8, 10 golfers you tell us are in each tier. And those numbers are going to differ quite a bit depending on who you throw in. Again, this is where the top 20 finish matters. We have that here because once we get down to a couple tiers down, right? I mean, the leaders are 40% or better to make the top 20. But once you get down to like tier 3, it's 25% or below, and it just keeps going down from there just to be top 20. So finding those guys, having that data to put in context helps. You know, we had one of our subscribers won the Visa contest for the Masters, and you'd be surprised, I think, on what it took to win that. So I want to preface this before we get into specifics. You know, that person did not win tier 1. I think they had Xander at the Masters. Xander had a solid Masters, but certainly Rory won it. You know, others finished higher than Xander among tier 1. He just didn't lose that much ground. Same with the tier 2 pick. I can't remember exactly who it was, but that entry, you know, had like Terrell Hatton and had Max Homa, had guys in tiers 4 and 5 that did really well in tiers where people missed the cut, among other picks. So in a lot of these tiers contests, you know, you're trying to find the guys that can win you the tier or at least not lose it for you by being close enough to the leader, and then finding the differentiation on maybe popularity and players that are undervalued. But when they do well, so much of the pool is on somebody else because the popularity's got concentrated elsewhere. When that chalk fails, that entry rises, right? Shoots up the board. It doesn't, like, maybe if you're in a pool with 10,000 entries, you got to get closer to the nut hand. But to win a 500 entry pool, even, you do not have to be close to the nut hand. You just have to have good results. And not the thing with a lot of these, you know, some of them will throw out worse score. If your pool doesn't throw out worse score, man, you got to thread a thin line. Your guys got to make the cut because you can't take those penalties and hope to do well. If you can throw out score, you can at least get one mulligan. But you need to have everybody make the cut that's going to score for you, probably to cash in a lot of these contests. So, but it doesn't take like hitting the best golfer in each tier to win. You just have to avoid the bad and hit some of the top golfers across the tiers. So let's go through tier 1 at Splash. As you can see, should be no surprise the names on here. Starts with Scotty, goes down to Colin and Fleetwood as the final golfers in this tier. You, of course, have everybody at the top of the odds board, all your favorites. We've got the data here. I mean, we expect Scotty to be the most popular. He almost always is. That being said, that popularity figure is lower than it has been in some other years. We've seen that get above 50% in some. previous majors contests. And so, Scotty still grades highly because you could take the position. He's not going to lose. He's probably going to be near the top. Picking Scotty's a nice conservative play, and I'll get my differentiation in other tiers. That's certainly a way to go. Another way to go is to try to find that golfer. We're projecting, because over half the popularity will probably go to Scotty and Rory, you can find some differentiation elsewhere. And if the golfer you pick wins the PGA, you do have a leg up on the field and give yourself a little more leeway elsewhere if you can hit that result. But you're obviously taking a little bit of an odds hit going off of Scotty and then Rory. So those are the ways to play it. There is, here's what I would say. We have grades on all these golfers. I don't think there's a single bad pick in any individual tier. It's when you get into combos and how you build. You can get risky. In a small pool, I'm probably thinking more Scotty. But in a really large pool, maybe you want to get more unique. Okay, that's fine. You can even eat chalk in a particular tier. You just don't want to do it across every tier as you build out. So let's get down to tier 2, because this is where I think it gets interesting starting here. These are some of the guys I just talked about. This tier runs from Brooks Koepka on our odds down to Ricky Fowler, Chris Goddard, Tyrrell Hatton. Victor Hovland is our projection for the least popular. That makes him somewhat attractive just on that factor alone, that he could be that under-picked guy. We don't have any super chalky picks projected in this range. We do project Cantlay, Koepka, Henley to be among the leaders in popularity, but to kind of spread it out. So again, I don't think there's a terrible pick here. I like Hovland as that leverage play. Rose is, showing up grading highly because of a lower pick percentage too. So if, I talked about Rose, my hesitancy about his recent form. If that holds though across pools, everybody has a good price. If he's underpicked, I don't mind him. So again, all of these are pretty good picks. Brooks is a solid pick. I mean, above average odds to compete in the group, above average odds to finish top 20 for this group, and popularity that's not excessive. So all those guys are in play here. Tier 3 and below are where we're going to talk about golfers we didn't cover quite as much. I did cover Spaun and Scott. Nikolai Højgaard is projecting as the most popular. He's coming off a second place there last week at the Truist, which was his best performance after a hot start early in the year. He'd kind of cooled down just a bit, but then had another great performance, up to 23rd in our rankings. And we think, based on the data we're looking at, going to be popular here from this pool. Again, like I said, you can pick Nikolai. You can pick the chalk from tier 3. Just get your differentiation in other tiers if you're going to do that. But Spieth, a little bit underpicked. McIntyre, not popular. That's the thing about these versus one and dones. Yes, you need to have your golfer do well, make the cut. But if everybody's going to react to certain golfers as being far more risky and jump off them, sometimes you got to be contrary in your thinking in these tiers pools to really differentiate. We've got Lowry, Matsuyama, who has been sliding and not playing well. So, I mean, the recent form justifies that lower popularity projection. But if I told you you're going to get Hideki Matsuyama in tier 3 at one of the lowest popularity golfers in the tier a month and a half ago, you would have been like, wow, really? So that's something to just consider is, golf's, we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes you embrace that uncertainty when you can get a situation like that. Matsuyama makes sense on game theory reasons as a guy who's probably not going to get steam. So that's tier 3. Certainly, this is, I think, the last of these guys I would also pick in one and done pools. And then we go to tier 4. We project Minwoo. Minwoo's odds are like he was thrown into this tier. His odds are substantially better, but there's the rub. Like, he's the best golfer in this tier, but we also, all the indicators we're looking at, he's probably more popular than several of the guys in tier 3, just heads up. So when thrown down a tier, he's going to be even more popular. So I would be concerned about extreme chalk on Minwoo Lee in this tier. Like, do you want to fade or follow there? Like I said, you can follow any particular chalk. Just be smart about it. But this is a tempting one to go against. If that number is close to right, I probably want to be elsewhere, especially if I can get a Kurt Kitayama at above average odds to finish top 20 out of this group, because you can see several of them are below 20%. And at just merely moderate pick popularity, because we have Akshay as the second most popular projected in this group. So I like Kitayama here. Kitayama is one of the ones I would be looking at in tier 4 on Splash. And again, you can set up your own pools if you are a subscriber to our Majors product, our Masters and Majors product, or if you're a golf Pool Picks or Pool Picks Plus subscriber, you play in one and dones, and you subscribe to Pool Picks Plus or to the golf product in general, a golf package, you have access to this. So set your pools up, take a look, set your tiers, and see what it tells you for your specific entry. I also don't mind Ben Griffin here on low popularity reasons. Lots of options here because of Minwoo is drawing so much of the pick equity that this is probably the tier to take a shot, right? Can I win? Can I differentiate even in a semi-large pool and hit the right golfer in this tier and have some of the chalk fail? Tier 5. Joaquin Neiman's at the top of the odds in this tier, fairly flat. Alex Fitzpatrick is down there, could be popular. It's obviously been playing really well. I know we've got a lower grade on him in this pool. I would be not opposed to playing Alex Fitzpatrick at similar popularity to everybody else, even though he has that grade. Bridgman's one of those. He won at Genesis. He ranks high. He's probably the best putter on tour. It's whether he can do everything else at this course, but if he can putt really well and handle these greens and has the touch, he's in play here. So this is another interesting tier. Pretty flat in the numbers here. We saw Minwoo have a really high pick projection. So I think this is more one with go with who you like. I would probably argue to go against the Minwoo popularity more forcefully in the previous tier. And then we're getting down. This would be the final tier. If you're only at 6th tier, you would join these guys with everybody else. I'll quickly go through them. We have Smalley. Smalley's been playing pretty well, and so we think that'll influence his popularity by the numbers he's showing off up there. Harry Hall gets a shout out for his Apex video on Instagram. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go search up Harry Hall on Instagram and watch his video from last Friday. I happened to see it. I watched that show on Netflix, Apex. Hall nails the craziness of that character. So, I'd be tempted to throw him in just for that video. Good on you. Michael Thorbjornsen, also grading highly. But the thing about this tier is, again, pretty flat. So I'm probably looking to get the guys at relatively better odds. And these odds are small. There's not that much difference between 18% to finish top 20 and 13%, but there is a difference. And those differences add up over time. So I'm probably focusing on the Woodlands, Thorbjornsen's, Halls. I don't care if they're moderate popularity here. I'm probably giving myself the best chances at making the cut, even if that's a 4 or 5% edge in this tier. So I'm looking at probably those 3 up top, and probably looking at just staying off Smalley more if he's going to get the popularity steam. Tier 7, we get some veterans. We get Wyndham, we get Harmon, some of our major winners from a few years ago. Poston, We also get, Berger, Pearson, Cootie. So Poston is low popularity. He's a guy that, can be hit or miss, needs a certain profile, needs to do well enough off the tee to give himself a chance. I would probably look at the guys up top here like Berger. Jordan Smith is an interesting one if, in fact, he's coming at slightly lower popularity than some of these other guys at the top half of this group. Jordan Smith grades highly here. Now, that popularity is based on doing some analysis of numbers coming in from a lot of contests and where they're relatively falling. So I would trust, even though it's 9 to say 13 for Wyndham Clark, I would trust that Jordan Smith is a little less popular than Wyndham Clark, probably to the average pool player. And so Jordan Smith would be of interest to me here. And then tier 8, my advice on tier 8, this is a tier, this is the tier, can I get a guy to make the cut, right? Can I get a guy just to give me a score? At the Masters, it was a guy like Dustin Johnson or, somebody like that. Can I just find somebody to give me a score? I'm not as worried about those popularity numbers because I don't see any huge ones. And my entry is going to be unique enough it is. So who do you like? Who do you like to make a cut out of this group? And I'm probably not going too far down this board. Like, I'm not going down here to these guys with extremely long numbers in front of their name because I don't need to get that unique. Michael Block down there, maybe you want to ride the Block train, but, I'll probably stick to these top 6 to 8 names on this board, make my choices there. My guy Sudarshan, he's in play. Bud Cauley played solid over the last month. DJ did okay at the Masters. Sam Stevens has been a little up and down, but certainly has the game. So yeah, I would look at this group, and probably not go much below Denny McCarthy on that list in terms of who I'm considering picking for tier 8 if your pool goes to 8. So that covers the tiers. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below this video. Good luck in your tiers contest. We did not cover the Pick X's, but I do have articles on the site about how to play it in Pick X. I will have that in the PGA article on our site tomorrow. We will also have updates today where I talk about some value picks, some of these same tier concepts. So if you are in a majors pool, check it out. Good luck. And if you have questions, drop them in YouTube and come into our Discord. We have plenty of discussion in there. Lots of people that love to talk one and done and strategy. So check that out as well. And it's been great to have you. And good luck at the PGA Championship.